so I think we got to the star of the night, Miguel. Let me do a proper introduction. So Miguel's actually a friend of mine from school in Madrid, and he did a little bit of a career pivot. We stayed in touch, and when we started Head Start Academy, he got in touch and said, "Hey, is there any way I can help?" He's very, very passionate about sales, and right now he's working as an account executive at MindGym. So let's start at the beginning, Miguel. Tell us a little bit about you, your background, all the way from the beginning, right? What did you study? How did you transition into sales?
So essentially, after I finished school, in Madrid, I moved to London for university, and I did a degree in business. And I have to say that during the entire 4 years of my degree, I didn't even think about sales once as a career that could have been for me, as something that I'd want to pursue. You know, the people around me weren't thinking about sales. No one in my family's in sales, so sales really wasn't part of my consideration at all. And I was looking at your more, I guess, typical, you could say, career paths, such as a career in marketing, a career in finance. And that's kind of what led me to my first job after university, which was in consulting. And I spent 4 years in consulting. And I think looking back now, what that basically gave me was a real awareness of, first of all, what I liked to do. So what actually gave me energy in my role, in my day-to-day. And then what I didn't necessarily like that much about that environment. So if I can kind of dive into that a little bit. So what I liked, I found after those 4 years was, first of all, I loved working with clients, just being in front of clients, really kind of getting submerged into their world, understanding different challenges and different businesses. I'm a very curious person, so learning from companies all the way from a company that provides pest control services to a pharmaceutical, for example, just such a broad range of exposure that I really loved. And I also loved the idea of kind of taking big challenges and breaking them down in logical ways, so you could help the client kind of get to a solution and implement a solution. So I love doing that, and consulting did give me a lot of opportunity to do that. However, I didn't like, or gave me a little bit of frustration about that environment, is that it was extremely kind of structured. And when it came to things like autonomy and the way you want to kind of manage your workload or manage how you interact with clients, kind of manage what you do in a day-to-day, there's a lot less freedom, and you have to abide by a lot more rules, which is super suited for some people, but it just kind of wasn't that suited for me. So I started to look, after 4 years, at other opportunities. I started to look into smaller companies, because I thought, maybe within a smaller consultancy, there's more of an entrepreneurial spirit, and maybe this freedom that I'm kind of lacking at the moment. And it was really by chance, actually, that I got introduced to what would happen maybe if I pursued a career in sales. So I had an ex-colleague from my consultancy who moved into where I am now, MindGym, as a head of sales, and kind of got in touch and said, look, I know you're looking for opportunities. Have you considered doing this? Let's have a conversation. And seeing kind of that person who I admired make that transition in his career from consulting to sales, and kind of hearing from him that how exciting it had been, how much he was liking it, kind of gave me that boost of confidence to say, maybe this is something that I could try it as well. So I moved into MindGym, where I'm an account executive. If you remember the chart Alvaro showed, I kind of do everything from my own cold calls, emails, all the way to managing my clients, and once I land them, helping them grow. So I'm kind of that full cycle sales rep, is what it's called. And I've been in that role for 2 years now, and I've really just not looked back, because it's literally the perfect balance between being in front of clients all the time, working on tricky challenges, and kind of getting exposure to loads of different businesses and loads of different people, which I loved, but really with a really, really high degree of autonomy that I think is impossible to get, especially at an early stage in your career. So yeah, that's why I'm really passionate about it, and I'm really passionate about helping people break into it, especially at the start of their career. I think it's super useful.
Amazing. That's a very cool story, Miguel, and kudos to you for breaking that mental barrier, right, and going into sales. And I'm very glad that you're happy. So on that note, what was your perception, if you can remember, before you ever considered working in sales, and now that you have been working in sales for a while?
Yeah. So it's a
It's a
really
really
so
I think
you have to mute yourself.
mute
Sorry.
yourself. Sorry. Oh, my bad.
I think sales wasn't really part of my consideration set at all while I was thinking about what career I wanted to follow. However, now that I'm in sales, I'm remembering a couple of instances where it kind of crossed my path a little bit. So one of those examples is during my degree, we took a year. My group took a year out of university to spend a year of what we call an industry. So a year of where you get work experience before you go back to university and finish your degree. And most of us kind of went into consulting, into marketing, into finance, and kind of did those type of jobs. But there was a rumor going around. I think everyone in the university kind of ended up hearing about it, where this guy landed an internship at American Express in their sales team. And the rumor was how he'd basically, during that internship, made 3 times the money than any of us had made during our own internships, right? So I remember looking at that and thinking, like, good for him, but still not really thinking, is that something that might apply to me? It kind of wasn't part of my consideration set, because my identity was so tied with that kind of idea of a more traditional career path. But it was a good for him sort of thing. And I think a similar example is kind of 2 years or so into my career. I had a friend who was working for Nutanix, a tech company, as a salesperson, and he's been the first one who's been able to buy a house out of my whole friendship group. So it must have been quite good for him. But again, it wasn't really something that I thought, oh, so that could also be me. That's something that would appeal to me. I just never really considered it in that way. Because I think of that kind of subconscious perception of sales being only for extroverts, people who don't really care, like they're happy to just sell anything to anyone without much consideration around whether it's good or bad. Kind of that those finish completely. So actually, in the team I work now, so in the sales team I work now, I can safely say that I haven't worked with a more passionate group of people who are so focused on their self-improvement and on doing well by their clients in their day-to-day in any other job. So I'm seeing a real drive, a real passion from people. And the funny thing is that when I look at who's performing at the top, so the directors of sales that are working in my team, who are really kind of like the rock stars of their team, one of them, yes, he's your classic extrovert, loves to be around people all the time, can talk for hours and hours. And the other one is really introverted, really focused, just likes to get their work done kind of more in a silo. And both of them are just kind of smashing it out of the park. Their clients love them. They're super credible. They have wonderful collaborations and wonderful relationships. So I think it's a super versatile role, and many different personalities can go into it. So if you have a perception of sales, it's probably not true, because there just isn't one type of salesperson. I'd say, from my experience anyway.
Absolutely, and we've found actually that more introverted people can become very, very good salespeople, even better than extroverts in many certain cases, right? Yeah. So that brings me to right. You spoke about you're happy in what you're doing right now. Can you walk us, Miguel? And I think for many people that are considering that career path, this is probably one of the most interesting questions. What do you do in your day to day? What does a typical day for Miguel look like?
Yeah, so I think there's no typical day, but there are definitely activities that you have to kind of fit into your week. So there are in my role, I have essentially how it works, a number, a revenue target that I need to hit over the course of 12 months. So over the course of a year, and I have a territory which I need to basically sell into in order to hit that revenue target. And in the way MindGym does it is that territory is a certain industry. So in my case, it's technology, fast growth technology companies. The rest is really kind of up to you. So like I said before, there's a high degree of autonomy in the plan that you make to kind of enable you to be successful. In terms of the basic activities that you have to do is, first of all, ask yourself the question, how am I going to start filling up my pipeline with opportunities? A lot of companies have teams devoted only to kind of getting meetings and getting people to be interested and wanting to talk to you about the product. In my case, we don't have that team, so I do that myself. And specifically what this looks like is, you know, looking at my industry, identifying a few different companies that are doing really exciting things and who I think would benefit from what MindGym does. And then looking at some key people and some key decision makers within those companies using things like LinkedIn and other software that kind of other directories that we have to really identify those people, get things like phone numbers and emails, and really build myself out a list of these are the people that I'm going to focus on trying to get meetings with and generate opportunities for over the next few months. Then what I do with those people is two things. Well, actually three things. What I like to do is connect with them on LinkedIn and write them a short message, just telling them, hey, I've seen you do this. I'd love to connect. I'll follow up with an email. Then soon after, I follow up with an email, more of a fuller kind of, why am I talking to you? Why do I think it would be valuable to have a meeting? And this requires a lot of research into their role, their industry, what their interests might be. You need to make it really kind of focused on them. So there's a whole art in how to craft that email, which no one has been able to perfect, but you can only improve it. And then the third touch point, which is kind of a call or a voicemail saying, look, I connected you with you on LinkedIn. I wrote you an email. I'm not sure if you've seen it. I'd love to chat. And kind of following that sequence and following that process, you'll eventually start setting yourself up with a range of meetings where you can really kind of get in front of clients and start looking into what are your problems, what are your plans for the next 12 months. I've seen that your competitors are doing this. How are you handling this situation? And start really to identify where you can kind of come in with your value proposition and help them achieve their goals. So what this looks like is my diary is usually back to back with discovery meetings. So really having those exploratory meetings with clients, see if we're a good fit, and then moving them along the sales process. So you've kind of explored your challenges with them, and then you move into, okay, now that I know your challenges, you want to see a proposal from me. There's a big part of the role which is putting together that proposal. What can we actually do? How much is it going to cost? Sending it over to them, discussing it with them, and kind of going through the next stages, which is doing a demo, negotiating on prices, always a negotiating stage, and kind of eventually, hopefully, if you're successful, closing that deal. So I would say your week is composed of every single piece of those activities, and which makes it kind of challenging to manage because you have to have your head in a lot of different places. So with this person, I'm right at the start, but with this person, I'm literally about to negotiate the final contract. So I think a huge thing is time management. But in terms of what your week looks like, it's such a broad range of different activities that you never get bored, and you need to kind of keep that machine, that engine going. So you make sure that once you close that deal, you've already got the next one moving along the pipeline as well. So very, very varied, very, I think it's exciting, but yeah, super, super varied role.
Super dynamic for sure. What's the thing you like the most and the least?
So I think
you can be fully honest, Miguel.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm going to have to agree with what every other sales rep would tell you, which is cold calls aren't fun, right? You're making maybe 20 calls, of which you have one conversation on any given day. If you are susceptible to rejection. You're going to end up that day destroyed. I certainly ended up those days destroyed at the beginning, but you kind of develop that resilience and you make it into a little bit of a game. So, oh, they rejected me, so how can I do something a little bit different on the next one to make sure that goes better? And you start kind of being a bit creative. So one thing I've started doing now, for example, is just start my cold calls saying, look, John, you're going to hate me because this is a cold call, but I've seen you're looking at this. I read an article you wrote. Do you have 30 seconds for me to explain to you, why I'm calling, right? So it's something that you can actually end up having fun with. And I've found myself to get into a good flow with that as well. But it's my least favorite part of the job, but necessary. And I wouldn't say I hate it. There's nothing about my role that I hate. Then another part of it is obviously the admin, which is probably 5% of my role, which is making sure you keep your Salesforce updated, everything recorded. So, your boss can see your activity, management team can see your activity, and kind of everything is tracked. So I just reserve a little bit of my Friday afternoon, maybe half an hour, to make sure that everything's up in the system and I can keep everything organized in that way. So yeah, probably the admin and the cold calling would be the least favorite things, I'd say.
Yeah, absolutely. I can relate. I've done a lot of cold calls in my life. And Dom was mentioning, right, there's a reason why, because it might seem very old school. There's a reason why in sales, cold calls aren't going anywhere. And it's the fastest way you can get feedback from a client, right? You can still try to engage them through social selling, email, etc. But if you get somebody on the line, there's a certain art to engaging them that can also be fun. So I remember we used to treat it as a game. We had to cold call people from many different businesses because I was working and doing consulting for different companies, and we actually helped them get new clients. And we turned it into a game, right? So I got 10 leads, the other person got another 10 leads, and we saw, okay, how many of these people can we engage? So, but I definitely agree with you. Cool, Miguel. So, what's next for you? I mean, I hate that question. Where do you see yourself in 5 years' time, right? Very structured. You don't have to know, but if you do know, please share with us.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's actually a really good question because the answer is I don't know. I've never really had a clear kind of path that I wanted to follow. And the reason why I think it's a really good question is because I think sales gives you that freedom to explore while knowing that you're developing really transferable skills for when the time comes where you know what your next step is going to be. You're going to have such a good arsenal of tools that will help you be successful in getting to that next stage. So an example is, do you want to become a business leader in your organization? There's no other role apart from sales that gets you exposed to the financials of your own company at such an early stage. So you've literally got sight of how your company's making money from day one that you're in sales. And this is such an important education for a future business leader. So that's a really good tool to have. Another career path could be, do you want to start your own company one day? If you want to start your own company, you're going to need you're going to need to know how to sell your products. Again, having done sales, you'll be hitting the ground running. You might not have to hire someone to do that for you while you're starting to kind of get your company off the ground. And you'll be used to managing your pipeline as well. So managing your clients and managing kind of the revenue of the organization. So I think sales is such a wonderful career to go in at the start of your career because it's really full of transferable skills that will allow you to do a lot of different things when that becomes clear to you, whatever that may be.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. I think sales is probably one of the better professions that opens up many different career paths, right? You can grow within a sales team, you can grow within the company to something else. It's definitely a must for entrepreneurship. It's one of the core skills that I developed early on in my career and the one that has helped me the most. Basically for anything that you want to do, I think sales is a very, very, very good experience. Great. So we're almost out of time. I'll leave some space for questions after, but just as a parting thought, Miguel, any piece of advice that you would give anybody that's looking to get into sales?
Yeah, I mean, I this is the reason I reached out to you when I saw what you were doing with Head Start, because I think the way you described it earlier is great. It's you know, you are more likely to get a job after you go through this process than if you didn't, immensely more likely. But I think there's a real value in doing it as well, because when you start a sales job, it's so difficult. You have no idea what you're doing. You get into the phone with a client, you panic straight away. The call goes terribly, and you spend about 6 months doing that, making no money and feeling, really bad about yourself. However, having that training, having the opportunity to have that training, I think will just set you apart from day one from all the other people who are starting out your company, and just allow you to start making money more quickly and really contributing and adding value more quickly. So I'd say that, and congratulate you for what you're doing with Head Starts. And then my other piece of advice would be really to, like I said before, if you've got preconceptions about sales, just reach out to people and see, what people around you are in sales leadership positions. That it's a community that's always really happy to just give mentorship and advice to people, and you'll see what a diverse set of personalities and backgrounds sales has. So if you think it's not quite right for you, do explore it, because it's really such a great opportunity, and you'll meet so many people from so many different backgrounds. So I'd say definitely keep an open mind, and I'd love to hear your stories as you go along and continue to explore this further.
Amazing, Miguel. Yeah, and then to your first point, right, that's precisely why we started Head Start. I mean, what we're trying to prevent. There's no education for sales. People are thrown in the deep end. We want to throw you in the deep end, but give you a lifeline at least, right? So it's so that when you actually go to a company and you begin, you don't have those 6 months of absolute panic that you don't know what to do. So yeah,